Yo, what's up, everybody? RageGage20 here. And you know, I was just gonna do one reaction video today, one music reaction video today, and I was gonna be like, I'm good. But then I was, looking at some Mr. B, and I was like, you know what? It's been a while. I should listen to some Mr. B. And there's a few ones I've been kind of skipping to get to other ones that I would think would be more entertaining and whatnot. I was like, you know what? Let's give these ones a shot. So today, we have the biggest legal fuck up, no asterisks here, in history. Now, my guess, I'm gonna call it right here, right now. Yeah, 40-second mark. He had it. Every time I hear that, I'm just like, I'm calling Jack in the Box right now. I don't know if that would be the biggest legal fuck up out there, but for those of you who don't know, I mean, thanks to, it's kind of a good thing, but at the same time, Jack in the Box just fucked it up for everybody. We have a lot of health precautions and a lot of stuff that we have to constantly be checking all the time to make sure that your food products, from fast food to restaurants, etc., isn't going to get anyone sick or kill anybody, because Jack in the Box done fucked up back in the day. So thanks. So that's my guess. We'll see if I'm correct or not. It looks older than that, but Jack in the Box is pretty old, right? I don't know. It's all in black and white, so I assume it's older than that, but we'll see. Also, just want to say to all you nice Mr. B fans out there, I appreciate you. However, I have noticed that there's a lot of really fucking odd Mr. Ballen fans. They go look up reactions of Mr. Ballen. I've had 3 people specifically that have just baffled me each time. The first one was this horse ranch YouTube channel that preaches positivity and whatnot, and like, hey, don't give advice if you don't know what you're talking about. Yet they decided to post on one of my Mr. B videos, your trying voice is so cringe. I was like, I don't even know what that means. I was like, this is my regular voice. Thanks for the insult. I don't fucking know what the fuck you're talking about. So that was funny. Then the next one, someone wanted to make sure that they told me, hey, you're not Mr. B. The real Mr. B is a fucking vet war hero, and like, that's all I gotta say. Bye. And it's like, I know I'm not. That's why it says reaction at the top. Crazy. I don't know if you thought I was pretending that this was my video or something. And then the last person decided to click on an hour-long video just so they could complain, how the fuck can you talk for an hour on these videos and whatnot. It's like, I got a very simple solution for all of y'all. So you're on YouTube, right? Let me follow the story here, and then I promise we'll get to here, so I don't spend an hour on this video, which I probably will, because usually it's about 2 minutes per 1 minute of the video, so this will probably be around an hour, just so you know. But here's some advice for you if you happen to be scrolling through YouTube next time, and you're just like, I want to see a reaction of a Mr. Ballen video or something, and you see one that says like an hour long, and you're just thinking, wow, that's crazy long. I don't want to watch that. Here's what you do. Don't click on the fucking video. I know that that's mind-blowing shit, but I don't care if you don't watch it. If you don't want to, if you think, wow, that's way too long, I would not be interested, then don't fucking click on the video. You don't need to click on the video just to fucking talk shit, dude. What the fuck's wrong with you? Is there brain cells in there? God, fuck, I swear people on YouTube are fucking stupid. Anyways, bring me down. Let's see what the biggest legal fuck up in history was. I'm calling J and the B's right now, but we'll see. We'll let it build. We'll see if anyone else can top it.
In 1953, a man had just moved into a new apartment in London, and as soon as he went inside, he decided he wanted to renovate. And so he started by pulling down all the wallpaper in the kitchen. And as he's doing it, he makes his way into the kitchen pantry and he pulls off one particular strip of wallpaper, and he sees behind the wallpaper, towards the bottom of the wall, is a door. There is a secret door behind the wallpaper. So he gets down and he rips off more of the wallpaper, and then he grabs the little handle and he pulls the door open. And what he sees inside of this little room was not only horrifying and would scar him for life, but the contents of this secret room would change the legal system in the United Kingdom forever. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, when the like button asks you to spray sunscreen on their back, gladly agree, but instead of sunscreen, use blue spray paint. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications.
I'm gonna do a big fat liar. Paul Giamonium. Yeah, that's good shit. Okay, so if this was the U.S., I would call it Jack in the Box, but apparently they built some kind of small connecting secret room, maybe a portal to the Alice in Wonderland or something. This is very fascinating. I guess it would be Alice in Wonderland, a portal to Wonderland, and Alice is there chilling or something. This is interesting. Let's go.
So you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story. The crime that would eventually put Timothy Evans on death row was horrific. But when you take a look at Timothy Evans's past, it's not really a shocker that his life played out the way that it did. Before Timothy was even born in 1924 in the southern end of Wales, his father had abandoned him and his siblings and his mother. Sure. And because Timothy's mother made almost no money, when Timothy was born, he was effectively born into poverty. As a young child, Timothy really struggled to learn how to speak properly, and then in school, he just really struggled to keep up with his peers. To make matters worse, when Timothy was 8 years old, he contracted tuberculosis of the skin on the underside of his right foot. This condition is not necessarily fatal, but it causes these large, painful blisters that take a really long time to go away, even with treatment. And because Timothy's outbreak was on the underside of his foot, it made walking nearly impossible. And so for a few years, starting when he was 8 years old and he was diagnosed with tuberculosis of the skin, Timothy had to miss huge chunks of his schooling to get medical treatment. And then other times he was missing school simply because he couldn't walk. And considering how poorly Timothy was already doing in school, these huge extended absences were totally catastrophic for his education. In fact, later in life, it would be determined that Timothy's IQ, which is a way to measure people's intelligence, was somewhere between 60 and 70, which is very low and put him in the range of having an intellectual disability. Not long after his tuberculosis of the skin diagnosis, Timothy would remain in school despite all of these absences and despite how difficult it was for him, but his real focus would shift from getting an education to trying to find work in order to help provide for his family, who were very poor. And Timothy was willing to do just about anything for money. For example, when he was only 13 years old, he became a coal miner, one of the most
I was like, what are you talking about there, Timothy? Like, I mean, we ain't that down bad yet, man. Come on now.
Dangerous jobs on the planet at the time and still today. But despite Timothy's willingness to do these really challenging jobs that often paid very little, he would always eventually get fired, or he just would not get the job in the first place. He would be rejected. And always it was because either one, he had a flare-up of his tuberculosis on his foot, which made it impossible to walk, and so he couldn't go to and from his job, and so he'd be let go. Or it would be because of his illiteracy, and the job just could not take someone in that could not read, write, or really even speak very well. Or in some cases, like when Timothy tried to join the military when he was 18 years old, and World War II was raging and all of his peers are going off to fight the war, well, when he tried to enlist, the military said, we can't take you because you are illiterate and because of your foot.
Yeah, like, if you can't, I mean, you'd be a liability, man. Like, if you can't walk, what the fuck are you gonna do in the army, man? I mean, literacy would would be a problem because you have to be able to take commands and and whatnot. So yeah, if you don't understand what's being said to you, that you can't have that kind of confusion out in the battlefield.
This constant cycle of rejection and embarrassment really made Timothy quite cynical. He felt like he just didn't belong anywhere. And so at some point, perhaps as a coping mechanism, Timothy began to lie. He'd make up tall tales about the adventures he'd been on and all the influential people he knew and the superhuman skills he possessed. Now, most people who knew Timothy didn't believe any of the stories he told, but every now and again, some people actually did. And
if he can barely speak, how can he come up with these like grandiose tales?
for Timothy, that little sliver of respect he would get in that moment, even though it was built on a lie, on an illusion, it was incredible for him. He didn't get that anywhere else in his life, and so he kind of became addicted to telling these lies. Fast forward to 1947, Timothy was 23 years old, and he was still living with his family, who had left Wales and had moved to London, and they were living in a very, very poor and dangerous neighborhood. At the time, Timothy had managed to get a job as a delivery driver and had yet to be fired from it, and on one of his daily routes around the city, he wound up meeting an 18-year-old girl named Beryl Thorley, who he really took a liking to. Now, according...
Sorry. What was her name? Beryl? Is that a common name? I mean, the number of fascinating names that are in these stories is just crazy. I don't think anyone could beat Tiger Hungarian. But Beryl's fucking cool name, man. So, very interesting, unique names.
To people who knew Beryl, she apparently...
Oh, that kind of Beryl. Got it. That's a little bit more common. It sounded straight like Barrel. Barrel. L-E. No, E-L. Yeah. That was more like that. No, but that kind of Beryl. Yeah, I've seen that one before.
Timothy had a very low IQ. And so Beryl and Timothy, they meet on one of Timothy's routes, and they immediately hit it off and they start dating. And by the end of that year, they were married. They initially lived inside of Timothy's family's apartment, but when Beryl became pregnant in early 1948, she and Timothy pooled what little money they had, and they got an apartment of their own. Their new apartment was terrible. It was tiny, it was dirty, it was located in an even more dangerous neighborhood than where Timothy's family lived, but it was good enough for them, at least at first. Once Beryl gave birth to their daughter...
I understand that they're... I understand that there's dangerous neighborhoods like wherever you go. Some places unfortunately have more than others and whatnot. But I'm just imagining what kind of ruffians in London would cause a place to be like a bad neighborhood. My mind immediately went to some like extreme like Cockney kind of like, "Oh, you in the wrong neighborhood, you is!" Like, this is where first place my brain went. I was just like, it made me laugh. Anyways.
Daughter, Geraldine, suddenly their cramped living quarters seemed impossibly small for a family of 3. And they were already extremely tight on money, and now adding a baby to the mix, they really just did not have enough money to survive. Timothy immediately tried picking up extra work wherever he could, but once again, his illiteracy and his foot, or a combination of the two, held him back. And so it wasn't long before the couple was forced to start taking out these awful high-interest loans that they knew they would never be able to pay back. So they are permanently saddled with debt. They know it. And these loans are only enough to barely get by. This is not enough to move out. This is only enough to stay in their squalid and awful conditions. And so as their debt piled up, in conjunction with all the stresses of being new parents and living in this really cramped space, it wasn't long before Beryl and Timothy's marriage just totally started to erode. It started with daily daily arguing over one of their many hardships, but it quickly escalated to full-blown physical confrontation that often was so loud that passerby outside in the very busy street would hear, coming from the third floor, Timothy and Beryl screaming and yelling and punching each other, to the point where people outside literally stopped and just looked up, wondering what was going on up there. As Timothy's world seemed to just kind of crumble all around him, he at first turned to a coping mechanism he had used for most of his life, and that was just to lie about his current situation. He would tell people who would listen that he and his wife and his kid were doing great and everything was fine. But, behind closed doors, that wasn't true at all, and so that coping mechanism really didn't do a lot for him. And so Timothy eventually turned to alcohol to cope with his misery. But the alcohol would only make the situation worse because it was yet another thing for his wife to be mad at him about. And
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some just pretty pure alcohol that you can probably get that's pretty dirt cheap and whatnot. But you spend a lot of money on alcohol, money you don't got. That ain't a good choice.
he was depressed all the time, and it was eating away at their non-existent budget to pay for all this alcohol. And so Timothy would turn to yet another source for comfort, but it would be a very unlikely source of comfort. It would be his downstairs neighbor, John Christie. And the reason his downstairs neighbor was so unlikely was because John could not have been more different from Timothy. John was nearly double Timothy's age. He was incredibly smart, and he was respected not only by his peers, but really by the community. And that respect came from the fact that John had served during World War I and been right on the front lines, and had nearly been killed during a mustard gas attack when he was fighting in the trenches. And then after the war was over, John would come back to London, and he would become a police constable for quite a while, and then after retiring from the force, he became a post office clerk. But despite John and Timothy's vast differences, there was one thing they had in common: marital problems. John and his wife Ethel had gotten married back in 1920, so 4 years before Timothy had even been born. But at some point early on in their marriage, the couple had split up. They didn't get divorced, but they separated, and they lived totally apart for a while. But in 1934, the couple would finally reconcile, and that's when they moved into the ground floor apartment of the apartment building that Timothy and Beryl would move into years later. So, years later, when John is sitting in his apartment and he can hear coming from the third floor, like everybody else in the general vicinity, the sound of Timothy and Beryl fighting like crazy up in their apartment, John decided, with his experience with reconciling with his wife, that he ought to reach out to that young man, Timothy, and offer him some advice, or at the very least, be a friendly sounding board. And so John would eventually strike up a conversation with Timothy one day when they were passing each other, and Timothy was at a place in his life where he was looking for friends. He didn't have any friends. And so John, to come into his life at this point, was really good for Timothy, and so very quickly those two struck up a friendship. But this friendship was not really peer-to-peer. It was more like father to son or mentor to mentee, where Timothy really looked up to John. I mean, Timothy had never had a father in his life, and so John kind of became that. And John looked at Timothy with a lot of empathy. He could tell this was a man who was, not very bright, and he was in way over his head with debt, with this marriage, with parenthood, everything. And so John tried hard to kind of coach and guide Timothy as he navigated this very rough time in his life. And their relationship likely could have had a really positive effect, not only on just Timothy's mental health, but also perhaps on the state of Timothy and Beryl's marriage. But it was not long after John met Timothy that Timothy found out Beryl was pregnant with a second child.
Oh, God damn it. Okay. So first, the whole time I've been thinking when he's describing this fighting and all that whatnot, it's absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible for their child, even at infant levels, to have to witness and be around this kind of explosive, violent, aggressive screaming and probably physical hitting and what have you. But now it's just why is it always the people that shouldn't have kids that have not only a child but multiple. The ones that can't afford it, the ones that are setting horrible living conditions like poverty and abuse and all this stuff that end up breeding like crazy. Like, it's idiocracy, man. It's like the ones that are like perfect to have a child push it off and like, oh, it's not the right time. But the ones that are absolutely horrible have like 10. It's just like, guys, stop fucking. I get it, makeup sex is wonderful, but like, stop fucking, man. You gotta stop fucking.
This was terrible news for Timothy.
Yeah.
He knew they absolutely could not afford another child. As it was, they couldn't afford the current child they had. They couldn't afford anything. And in the United Kingdom, abortions were illegal. So there was no way to terminate this pregnancy. And so, totally desperate and terrified, Timothy turned to John for guidance. And John would later recall on the witness stand during Timothy's trial that, John did his best to try to console and comfort and tell Timothy that everything was going to be okay. You'll get another job. You'll take out another loan. It'll all work out. But as John would...
John, you know that ain't right, man. you know that's not gonna work, man. You can't get any jobs. You're gonna take out a loan. It's like taking out a loan to pay for the loan, man. You just don't do it.
Say on the witness stand, his words didn't have any effect on Timothy. Timothy, by the time he came to John, was totally inconsolable. He was desperate and he was unhinged. And so John started to suspect that Timothy might do something really drastic to make his troubles go away. And John would be correct.
Oh, here we go. Advert.
While you lay in bed at night and you're looking up at your plastic glow-in-the-dark stars that line your ceiling, do you ever pull the blankets up?
Wow, I've not had anything. I don't... Did I ever have those? Maybe I was really young. But I haven't seen anything like that since, like, man, late 90s, early 2Ks, man. What happened to those? Good times. Anyways.
Tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code Mr. Ballen. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app.
It's 4 months ago. Hopefully it still works. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it's $20 off of something. Y'all should jump on that.
A few weeks later, on November 30th, 1949, a very disheveled-looking Timothy wandered into...
Yeah, that picture of him. I was going to say this earlier, but I was like, I'll just let the story roll out. Maybe I'll show the picture again later and I could talk about it. He just looks surprised. It's like, I got caught? What happened? He just looks so shocked and surprised in that moment. And I don't look forward to finding out what would give him that face.
To a local police station in Wales, not far from where he had grown up, and he would confess to the police that he had killed his wife.
I told you she was dead. Did I not call? I knew that right out the gate that she was going to be dead. Whatever his legal fuck up was going to be, her death was probably going to be involved in there somewhere. If not, her death was the legal fuck up and whatnot. And I'm pretty sure he's stuffing these bodies in this secondary room or something like that. I don't know.
He would tell the police that he had given...
I'm sure his child probably got killed too. Not the unborn one, but the born one.
Beryl a poison that was apparently designed to abort her fetus, but this poison was too strong and it had killed Beryl. And then...
I mean, you guys are... I mean, this is not okay. just putting that out there. This is not okay. And that's why I didn't bring this up originally, even though I thought it. So, like, don't do this ever. But, like, instead of poisoning, you're already getting in fights and whatnot, which sounds like it's physical. You just thought about punching her in the womb? Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously that's fucked up. That's horrible. Never fucking do that, by the way. But, like, if you think about the outcome of she died and he poisoned her, thinking miscarriage from being punched, that sounds better, right? Like, I obviously neither should happen, but like, lesser of two evils. All I'm saying, like, you didn't really think that one through, man.
After she
I don't
was
think he
dead,
thought anything through.
Timothy said he panicked, and so he took her body and he dumped her down the sewer that was outside of their apartment building. And then he arranged for his daughter, Geraldine, to go stay with some people in London while Timothy fled to Wales. But after getting to Wales, Timothy said his guilty conscience was just too much, and so he turned himself in.
Luckily, he didn't kill his daughter yet, which is good. I don't think he will, but good. However, so he dumped her in the sewer, and then immediately, soon after-ish, went and confessed. The fuck does the secret room come into play, and what the hell is in that secret room? I'm excited. Let's keep it going. Let's keep it going.
The police immediately arrested Timothy
Of
and
course.
they brought him back to London. And then once he was in a cell in London, London detectives went out to Timothy's apartment building and they went to the manhole cover that led down into the sewer that was right outside of the apartment building. And right away they noticed something odd. They were not able to get the lid off of the sewer. It was just too heavy. It would move, but one man couldn't do it. And so after 3 police officers, they all got down, they were barely able to get this lid up and off of the top of the sewer. And then when they went...
The depiction of him is... Okay, I was like, damn, did they actually have pictures of this? But no, this is in color, so yeah.
Down into the sewer, there was no body. There was nothing down there.
Okay.
And so when detectives went back to Timothy in the London jail cell and they confronted him with this revelation that, no, she's not in there, Timothy would kind of squirm a little bit, and then he would totally change his story. He would tell police that it was not he who gave Beryl this poison that ended up killing her. It was his friend and mentor and father-like figure in his life, John Christie. Timothy also told police...
I don't know if I believe that one. Because, we already got the story that John... I mean, maybe John was on trial for a different reason. Maybe he said that he was like, oh, it was Tim, and like I tried, but the words fell on deaf ears and whatnot. But then he did something drastic. That's fucking fascinating.
Police that he left his daughter, Geraldine, in the care of John. Police are skeptical of Timothy, but because there's a child involved, they just immediately take his story at face value and they rush back to the apartment building and they knock on John's...
If you're going to confess to murdering someone, why would you then send them on a wild goose chase? Like, that's going to make things better. The body's not going to be there. They're going to come back. So what are you covering up for? Also, he specifically did not mention that he left the baby with John. He just said with someone in London, or with some people or whatever in London. Weird.
Door, and John opens the door and he's standing there with his wife Ethel, and he's totally shocked at these accusations that have been lodged against him by who he thought was a very close friend of his. And John and Ethel would tell police that not only did they have no clue what happened to Beryl, but Geraldine had never been in their care.
The kid still could be dead. No, I thought the kid was safe. Oh, he sent me on a red herring. No, the kid could be dead.
And so the police are immediately very concerned for Geraldine's well-being. Who has Geraldine? Where is she? But while they were there, they just did a thorough search of John and Ethel's property to make sure they weren't lying. And then after searching their property, there was nothing inside. But when police left John and Ethel's apartment and began searching the outside of the property, an area that they had briefly searched when they were there earlier, looking in the sewer, but now they're doing a much more thorough search. And during this thorough search, they find this shed that was located in the backyard of this big apartment building, and inside of this shed, wrapped in blankets, are the bodies of Beryl and her 13-month-old daughter, Geraldine. They had both been strangled to death. After processing the crime scene, the police went back to the jail where Timothy was being held, and they would tell him what they discovered at the property, and Timothy had a very muted response to it. And then when one of the detectives asked Timothy point blank, "Are you responsible for both your wife and your daughter's deaths?" Timothy would say yes. And then during a follow-on interrogation,
I mean, oh, that's another thing I was gonna say when he was telling him about John and what have you and whatnot. You know, he's a famous liar, right? He lied all the time. So it's very clear he could just be lying just because that's the only defense mechanism he knows. So he didn't poison, and he decided to strangle. Again, you have option A and B here. C not looking so bad. Did you think about C? Did you think about option C? Anyways.
Timothy would confess that he had been in a heated argument with his wife over money, and at some point during this fight, which got very physical, he strangled Beryl to death, and then 2 days later, he strangled his daughter to death. And
I mean, you didn't have to strangle the infant, man. You didn't have to strangle the fucking infant. Like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, just like if you, well, after you kill your wife, you could just be like, hey, police officers, take my baby, do something with my baby. By the way, killed my wife. You know what I mean? You don't have to kill the baby, too. You don't have to bring the baby down with the shit. The baby didn't do shit. Baby didn't do anything. Fuck's wrong with you? Just because you couldn't afford to keep the baby doesn't mean you strangled the baby. The fuck's wrong with you, man? What the hell? But like, if you're in that marriage, first off, and you're complaining about money, like, you know, you ain't got no money. So what's yelling at him about it gonna do? You know what I mean? Like, you knew this person's illiteracy and problem with his foot before y'all got married. You could have put 2 and 2 together and be like, I don't know if this person's gonna be able to support me financially. I mean, a little bit on you. I mean, not that that gives any excuse for you to be killed or anything, because, again, there was option C on the table. But, like, why are you bitching about money? Like, you know what was going to happen. Do you think money was just going to fly magically out his fucking ass? So, yeah, let's get married and have a kid? Like, come on, you knew there was no money. You walked into no money. But seriously, why the fuck you killed the baby, man? What the fuck's wrong with this? Everyone in this situation is fucked up.
Then after dumping their bodies in that shed outside, he fled to Wales. Timothy would actually recant that final confession, but it really didn't matter because when he went to trial a little over a month later, the jury just did not believe that Timothy did not do it. And so very quickly, they convicted him of murder and they sentenced him to death. Yeah. Just 3 months after his conviction, so on March 9th, 1950, Timothy would find himself sitting inside of the so-called condemned suite at Pentonville Prison in London. He was shackled to this table with guards sitting on either side of him in this very...
They made a... Oh, yeah, 10 Millington Place, I guess, was a movie of Timothy. Okay.
Small cell, and then right next to him was this wall that kind of ran down the side of the cell, and on the other side of that wall was the execution chamber. And so as Timothy would have been sitting at this table, suddenly the cell door that led into the holding area would have flung open. The execution team would have rushed in and grabbed Timothy and stood him up before he could run or fight back, and then before he knew it, he'd be pushed over to the door that went through that wall into the execution chamber. Once that door was open, Timothy only would have had maybe a couple of seconds to take in what he saw. And it would have been this pale green square room with a new stank.
Yeah, old school, baby. Old school London, man. There's a lot of crazy killings that went on there, man. Drawn and quartered and shit. Oh, yeah. The whole shebang. They did all.
Down from the ceiling, and right below it was an obvious mechanical trap door, and off to the side of the room was a lever that the executioner would actually pull to open up that floor and send the prisoner falling down into the pit below. So Timothy, he would have taken this in just for a second. His heart would have been racing, and before long, he would have been standing on this trapdoor. The noose would have come down. They would have tightened it to his neck. A bag would have been placed.
How many movies did they make about this dude? This must be one hell of a secret fucking door that we haven't even gotten to yet.
Over his head. All the guards would have pushed to the walls, and then before Timothy could even say or do anything, the lever was pulled, and he dropped down into a 12-foot deep brick-lined pit where he would dangle by his neck until he died. This gruesome ending should have been the end of an already very gruesome story, but it wasn't. Not even close. 3
Oh, not even. Well, I did notice that there was still a lot of time left on the clock here, but not even close. Jesus.
years after Timothy's execution, a man named Beresford Brown moved into the same ground floor apartment that John Christie and Ethel had shared. John had moved out just a couple of days earlier. And so Beresford, he moves into this apartment. It's totally dirty. It's not well kept. And so Beresford decides that he's going to fix the place up. And the first thing he's going to do is he's going to tear down all of the old wallpaper in the kitchen and replace it. And so he goes into the kitchen, he starts tearing down the wallpaper, he makes his way into the kitchen pantry, he starts pulling the wallpaper down in there, and at some point when he pulls one strip of paper all the way to the ground, he sees towards the bottom of this wall inside of his pantry where there are no shelves over it, behind the wallpaper, there is obviously a door, just a small door. It almost looks like the entrance to a crawl space. And so Beresford is totally intrigued, why would there be this door behind the wallpaper in the pantry? And so he rips off the remaining wallpaper over this little door. He finds the handle and he forces it open. And what he sees inside of that little room would haunt him for the rest of his life. 3 years and 4 months earlier, when Timothy discovered that his wife Beryl was pregnant with their second child, Timothy really did go to his friend John for guidance. However, this is where the story takes a turn. When Tim came to John, who was medically trained from his time in the military, he would tell Tim, hey, I can perform an abortion on Beryl if you want me to. Timothy immediately thought this was a great idea.
No comment.
And so, totally relieved, thinking his problems are now all solved, he left John's apartment and ran upstairs to his own. He told Beryl about how John could perform this procedure for them. Did she want to do it? And Beryl said, yeah, let's do it.
Oh, she said yeah. She said sure. I mean, that situation. That situation when you don't have the money, you don't got the money, like, you're probably up for it, but like an at-home abortion from someone who's technically medically trained because of the army.
Now, we don't know exactly what happened next, but the running theory is that sometime in November of 1949, Beryl and...
So, here's the question. Here's my theory. I love to give these theories and stuff because it's fun. Is there gonna be aborted fetuses just like multi? This happened a couple times just inside this crawl space, because that's really fucked up. But then why would you hide it? Like, technically illegal, but who's gonna be the police gonna knock on the door and be like, hey, y'all got abortions in here? Like, who's gonna fucking check for that? You know what I mean? I don't think you got people coming over. You don't have any friends, so you probably dispose of it anywhere easily. So, God, the mystery of this one is just really fucking crazy, man. All right. At-home abortion, let's go.
And Geraldine left their apartment on the 3rd floor and went down to the 1st floor, John's apartment. And when they got there, it was just John. John's wife Ethel, she was gone for the day. As for Timothy, he also was not present for this procedure, but he likely knew it was happening. So Beryl and Geraldine, they walk inside of John's apartment, and pretty quickly, Beryl finds a place, or maybe John finds a place, to put Geraldine in the apartment where she's safe. And then John ushers Beryl over to this chair. It's like his makeshift medical chair, and he tells her to have a seat. So she sits down, and John goes over and gets this device. And now this device, it looks like a glass jar filled with clear liquid, and then poking out of either side of it are these black, thin, hollow tubes that come out and connect at this kind of makeshift mouthpiece. And so John, he walks over with this device and he hands the mouthpiece portion of this device to Beryl, and he says, here, put this on your mouth and start breathing it in. There's a gas I produce that kind of numbs the pain as I do this procedure to you. And so Beryl did as she was told. She took this mouthpiece and she put it over her mouth and her nose, and she began breathing deeply. And as she did that, John grabbed a chemical and he began slowly pouring it into the glass jar where these tubes were coming out of. And as he did that, a white gas began to form above the liquid inside of the jar, and there was a cover.
There's no way that can be healthy to breathe in.
Over the top of this jar. So the gas was trapped inside of this jar. And as Beryl is taking these big breaths through those tubes, she's sucking that gas into her lungs. And very quickly, as she's breathing on this apparatus, she didn't start feeling numb. She just passed out completely. However, this was John's plan all along. That device he made her put on her face, that was only designed to make people pass out. It was not to numb any pain. John was not medically trained. He was not...
Yeah, I was just because you're in the army, unless you're a medic in the army, like, who'd get... I was like, was it standard... I didn't question it because, like, is it standard practice just to be medically trained and whatnot? Is he... What are you about to do to Beryl? Oh, no. John.
Performing abortions out of his apartment. He was a serial killer. So with Beryl now unconscious in front of him...
Oh, the twist in this one gets crazy. So the dude who moved into the apartment, did he move into John's apartment? Because I don't recall him saying whose apartment he went into. I just assumed it was Timothy's, but maybe that's what Mr. B wanted. Did you think that was Timothy's was actually John? And that's where the crawl space came from. And the bodies are. But their bodies were found in the shed. And he said that he did it, but then he later said that he didn't do it, and he seemed afraid of something. So was he afraid that John was going to kill him? So he had to say yes, but Tim was actually okay with it because there went some else you had to feed and some money and whatnot. No new baby for you, no wife for me. But then like the stress of just like, oh my god, this happened and whatnot, got the best of him. And so he fled to Wales to try to get away from John and confess, so he could maybe get thrown in jail and be safe from John. This one just fucking took a hard load. I mean, I'm looking at the thumbnail. That would explain why he's like afraid and shit. Anywho, chip cheerio, back to it.
John did the same thing he did to the other two women he had lured into his trap and whose bodies were now buried in his backyard. He began having his way with Beryl. Yep. And at some point during this assault, Beryl woke up and began trying to fight off John, but he overpowered her and he strangled her to death. And then after she was dead, John just walked into the other room where Geraldine was, and he used a shirt tie and he wrapped it around Geraldine's neck and he strangled her to death.
John, dog. Fucking some demons up there, bro. What the that's fucking fucked, man.
And then after that, he put the mother and daughter together in some sheets and he put them out in the shed in the backyard. Later, when Timothy came to John's apartment to see how the procedure had gone on his wife, John would tell Timothy that, sorry, it didn't work out and your wife is dead.
Yeah, some complications. She didn't make it.
Don't worry, I'll look after your daughter and make sure she's taken care of. You need to flee London and go to Wales now. And so Timothy, without really asking any questions, would do as he was told and he would flee to Wales. But a little while later, when he tried to check in with John about how his daughter was doing, because he had no idea where she was or who she was with, John would just not let Timothy see her. And so Timothy eventually, just feeling racked with guilt about this whole situation, he went to police. And critically, when he spoke to police, he lied about what happened.
He didn't even know that John was a serial killer. He just came out and straight said, like, hey, I killed my wife. Because, like, I was responsible for being like, yeah, I get the abortion, and oh, she accidentally died from... Tim!
He wanted to protect his friend John, who he looked at as a father figure, as a mentor, as a close friend. And so he said, I killed my wife. And so this is why Timothy got the location of his wife's body wrong, because he didn't know. He just guessed the sewer. And so that explains why when they got over to the sewer, not only was it empty, but it seemed totally impossible that anybody could have lifted this manhole cover on their own. It was too heavy. Then, after police discovered Beryl and Geraldine's body, and they went back to the London jail and told Timothy, that was the first time he found out what had happened to...
daughter was dead and that she was strangled. And that's when he found out that, oh, she was killed. And then he still lied about it, which ended up getting him killed, because I assume he figured maybe he would just be put in the fucking... just put in jail or something. But instead, he got fucking killed for it. That's...
his daughter. Because to that point, Tim really did believe that John had just been taking care of Geraldine, or John had handed off his child to somebody else who was taking care of Geraldine. But either way, Geraldine was okay. So he's just been told she's not okay, she's dead as well. His whole family is gone. And so Tim was almost certainly in shock. And so he's sitting there with that sort of muted response as detectives are asking him, are you responsible for your wife and your child's death? And so Tim would say yes, but it's unclear if Tim actually understood their question or if he understood the implications of their question. He might have just been saying, I feel guilty about the fact that my family is dead, not that he literally killed both his wife and daughter. But when Tim finally kind of snapped out of it and really began trying to tell the truth, that John was
he tried to tell the truth, but no one believed him at that point. There was a reason why he was saying that, like, why Mr. B made it such a point to say that he changed his story and started saying I didn't kill them at one point. There was that, but there was also, you know, like I was mentioning before, to where it said, like, if you killed them and you were going to confess, why would you then not tell them the right spot? You just that committed to lying. Well, that's why he didn't know it. I picked up on a few things, but I did not find the way to the
responsible. Nobody believed him because his credibility was totally destroyed, because the first thing he did when he went to police was lie about what happened. And when police dug into Timothy's history a little bit, they saw he was a compulsive liar. Everybody said, oh, Timothy tells tall tales, that's just what he does. And making things even worse for Timothy was the fact that he had a very clear motive for why he may harm his family. He was under crippling debt, and his relationship with his wife was incredibly toxic and often became physical. And there were lots of witnesses to that. During Timothy's trial,
anyone in the house,
despite the fact that Timothy and his lawyers tried everything they could to point the finger at John Christie, saying, no, he's the guy responsible, because John was constantly on the witness stand.
That's the legal fuck up, is that even the lawyers were like, this dude killed him. They're like, nah, he's a liar. And threw him in jail, and they found out, oh, this bitch is a serial killer. It's one hell of a twist, dude. I love this.
And had this impeccable resume as this war hero and this police constable, and he was well respected, and he was well spoken, and he was smart. The jury completely believed him. He was the epitome of credible, whereas Timothy was the opposite. And so it was largely John, the real killer's testimony that actually put Timothy, the innocent man, on death row. Also,
one of his, I mean, maybe 3+ years. One of his final serial killer kills there that he didn't even have to do himself. He got someone killed just by lying. He serial killed through the justice system. This guy's on a next level of serial killing, man. Like, this guy is like... this guy is doing like the inception of serial killing. That's insane.
So the police totally botched the investigation from the beginning because the police went into the investigation already completely convinced that Timothy was guilty.
Oh yeah, because he said he did it. There's not many people that go in and say, I just killed somebody, and they actually didn't do it. Like, happens. Very slim chance. So like, yeah, like someone shows up like, hey, I killed my wife. You're probably gonna believe that they killed their wife. That's just probably what you're gonna believe, man.
This was an open and shut case, and us gathering evidence and doing all this didn't really matter because Timothy was the guy. And so because the police were so focused on Timothy, they were blind to really obvious things all around them. For example, during their several searches of the apartment complex, both inside and out, a dog ran into the backyard and actually dug up one of the skeletons from one of those two women that John had killed years earlier and buried out there. And so a human skull and a human leg bone were visible outside as police are walking around. John...
It's like the dog's trying to be like, pointing it out, and they're just like, nothing to see here. It's fucked. That's so fucked, man.
John was able to grab the skull and chuck it next door into a burned out building, but the leg bone was literally propped up against the side of the backyard in plain view. Nobody caught it. The police are also believed to have coerced Timothy into signing his final confession, where he says, I not only killed my...
And again, he's illiterate and whatnot, that putting that pressure on him. You do it.
wife, but I also killed my daughter. There's even some speculation that the police literally signed it for him, that they forged the entire document. And so Timothy gets hauled off and executed. Meanwhile, John, the real killer, just keeps on killing. He would murder at least 4 more women, including his wife, Ethel.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, there's no way Ethel doesn't get killed in this situation, right? Because, like, she's going to catch on to something eventually, right? So, like, eventually she's going to become a target. Okay. Goddamn.
Using the same technique, the gas machine followed by strangulation. And it was during the time that he killed these last 4 victims that we know about that John became increasingly turned on by death itself. And so that was why he stuffed his wife's body right underneath the floorboards in his kitchen, and he stuffed those other 3 women inside of that tiny little room behind that secret door in the pantry. So that all day long as he was in his apartment, it constantly smelled of decomposing flesh. After
Ugh, that's gross. It's like Richard Ramirez, like, killing became a high and a sexual thrill. It's like, it's fucked up, man.
Beresford Brown opened that secret door in the kitchen pantry and discovered those 3 women's bodies smashed inside of there, he would tell the police, and then 10 days later, on March 31st, 1953, John Christie would be found and arrested. He would confess to killing all 8 victims, but the police only had enough evidence to charge him with 1 murder, and that was the murder of his wife, Ethel.
If you confess, said, yes, I killed all of them, do you really need to find evidence at that point? I mean, I guess, yes, because of the situation with Tim, but, like, I don't know.
But he was found guilty of that, and it was enough to warrant a death sentence. On July 15th of that year, at about 9 a.m., John Christie found himself sitting in the same condemned suite at Pentonville Prison that Timothy Evans had been sitting in 3.5 years earlier. Then, moments later, the door behind John opened up. The same execution team that killed Timothy Evans came inside, they grabbed John, they hoisted him up, they moved him over to the...
Is that irony? Or is that just a sad yet hilarious coincidence?
The door that led into the execution chamber. The door flung open and John got his first look at the gallows. They rushed him over to the middle of the room. They pulled the noose down, tied it tight around his neck. They put the bag down over his head. All the guards stepped to the side. And then right as the executioner is about to pull down the lever, John, out of the blue, says, "Wait, my nose itches." To which the executioner just said, "It won't bother you for long." And then he pulled the switch. Due in large part to the massive injustice in this case, where an obviously innocent man was carted off and executed, the UK would suspend.
I mean, innocent. Dude probably beat his wife. She probably beat him too, to be fair. I'm sure she threw some punches back. You know what I mean? But like, you know, and doesn't matter your opinions on abortion. I don't give a fuck. Don't even try talking to me. I'm just gonna delete the message. We ain't having that kind of argument in the comment section. I mean, technically, in theory, Elysian is Elysian is abortion at this point. Abortion is illegal in London at this time. I assume still, maybe. I don't look up laws and shit. Or at least in the UK and what have you. So I mean, that's technically breaking a law, and you know, I'm sure a huge portion of the world's population will also see that as additional. You did something wrong to attempt to have an abortion or whatnot. So I don't know about innocent, but innocent of what he was charged with, yes. We'll put it that way.
End the death penalty in 1965, and then in 1969 they would abolish it entirely. Between those two dates, in 1966, Timothy would receive a posthumous pardon for the murder of his family, meaning he is officially an innocent man.
Well, won't he be happy to hear that? Oh wait, it's kind of a little like, kind of too late after the fact, buddy.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's...
Woo! You know what? I did not see that one coming. I gotta tell you, like, the warning signs were there that something was up with John. You know, he seemed a little too innocent bystander in the whole situation, and usually that person, in a Mr. Beast story, is usually the person who's actually guilty and whatnot. And I should have seen that. Like, my warning signs were triggering based off of my past experiences with Mr. Beast stories. But I fell for the bait, the obvious hook that everyone else in the situation fell for. And it's just like, well, yeah, the dude confessed to killing them, therefore he's guilty. But what did he have in his... And then, yeah, you started piecing the puzzles together. You started catching this similar Mr. B roundabout sneaky ways. Like, he didn't say whose apartment. And, you know, it started to come a little too late for me. I fell for the trap on this one. I bit the hook, and I rode that all the way up the line. I ain't gonna lie to you. I hook, line, and sinkered on me for sure. But if I'm being honest with you, yeah, not where I saw that going. The reason why I would have, and now that makes me want to get to all these other ones, because like I gotta trust in Mr. B, and that's a mistake that I've made on skipping some of these stories. Is that like I thought like the biggest legal fuck up in history? I thought it was gonna be like dry, like, you know, business talk and stuff, like some like, oh, someone accidentally made this law and it wasn't legal, and oh, you know, I thought it was gonna be some like kind of dry something like that, or whether so I was just like, this one doesn't seem like, you know, it's all black and white, it's like some old school business law fuck up. That's not gonna be interesting. No, yeah, now I know. Every time I see the scariest surgeon on earth or whatnot, I just like, it looks like he's splicing two people together or whatnot, and just that imagery is kind of disturbing to me. So I was just kind of like, I don't want to see that. But now, after this kind of flip, on a story that I thought was gonna be dry and boring, I'm definitely gotta check that one out. But I'm definitely gonna check that one out. Because who knows what kind of juicy details are lying in that story. So yeah, definitely learned my lesson. It's just like the one time when I doubted Bob Ross. I doubted the master. And when you doubt the master, you get punished for it. You get that slap on the wrist. I don't remember what I doubted Bob Ross on. It was like he was started out making a painting. I was just like, he's saying it's gonna look like this. I don't see how the fuck it's gonna look like that. And then somehow did a complete fucking 180 on it. I was just like, I doubted the master. That's my bad. Like, what the fuck? What am I even thinking? And I doubted the master. I doubted Mr. B. And like, you know what? Shame on me for doubting Mr. B. I shouldn't. What's wrong with me? Anyways, this one was an hour, so fuck you. It is what it is, man. It's like double the length of the video. It's just how it is, like, every single time. I don't know. I like to stop and talk about things along the way. You know what I mean? I like to try to piece it together as it's happening. Like, I'm like trying to go through the story, not just sit here and just watch the whole story. Like, that was interesting. What should I like to do next, guys? You know what I mean? I'm a little sour on the subject. I don't know if you could tell. Could you tell? I don't know. I made them rage quit the conversation, though, and delete all the messages. So, like, you know, I'm pretty happy about the outcome of it. Because I pretty much just straight told them, like, you're an idiot. Why watch if you don't want to watch something that long? Why would you click on the video? Anyways. So, yeah, I had fun working my way through it. If it was in the U.S., though, I'm pretty sure the biggest legal fuck up would have been Jay and the Biebers. I'm afraid that would have been it. I'm telling you. But it was the UK, so yeah, it was a different story. So I would have been right on that call 40 seconds in, but like I didn't know we were talking about the UK. Okay, otherwise I would have been like 100% right. Let's just all admit to that truth and move on. Another Mr. B story down. Love it. I'm really excited to get to some of the other ones that are farther down. I'm just kind of following our way down, starting at the crazy neighbor and just kind of working our way down while a bunch of new ones are coming out. So I do want to try to get through these maybe a little bit faster, maybe doing it a little bit more consistently, so we can get up to some of the newer ones as well. Of course, I don't have to keep going down. I can jump around whenever the fuck I want, but like there's some really interesting ones down there that I really want to get to. Like, I mean, these are some of the really, really old ones. I don't know when he found his stride or whatnot, but there's one that I do know about, because most of these I've never fucking heard of. Let me move this to the side. Something. Most of these I've never fucking heard of, but there's been there's a few in here that I read about. Yeah, like Eliza Lamb. Obviously skinned. I've learned all about Eliza Lamb. So I'd love to see. I mean, it's 11 minutes. It's one of the first ones he ever did. So I would love to see his story and a take on a story that I actually know about. You know, that'd be interesting. Also, one that's a huge, fascinating tale that is one of the only American Horror Story seasons I ever watched. Which is actually pretty good. It's a pretty good season. You should check it out. Roanoke. I very fascinated by that story. I haven't really delved too deep into it, so it would be interesting to see his story on it. But yeah, very fascinating that just 100+ people just disappeared and no one knows what the fuck happened to them. No bodies were ever found. No, nothing. Fucking disappeared, man. So stuff like that would be very interesting to get to. That's very at the beginning here. So like I don't know if he like hit his stride right out the gate or if they're a little like shaky at the start, you know, because you know practice makes perfect, as he said himself in the comment when people asked how are you so good at this, and it's just a lot of practice. Did he start out with a lot of practice, or is it like did it take a little bit, you know, did it take a little bit to get there? So who knows if it would be if it would be like amazing. I also did one on the exorcism of Everly Rose, which It's a very slow and boring movie. But the subject matter of the movie itself is very fascinating. Uh, I tried watching it twice and actually successfully watched it once. And just the fact that she got possessed by multiple like powerful uh, demon lords, pretty crazy. And Satan himself was in there. Like the fact that she was even able to exist without being in extreme burning agony, flesh searing pain is just crazy. But obviously, it's not a real story. I think it's supposed to be based on a real story. But yeah. Anyways, so yeah, I would love to get to some of these. So I need to start working on it a little bit more. Of course, also the ones with the backstories and stuff like that. That'd be really cool. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all next time.